from lightning-fast sprints to a player faster than Usain Bolt. These are the fastest players in NFL history. And for Joey Galloway, his insane speed made defenders look like they were running backwards. Galloway was one of the OG speed demons of the NFL. In the late 90s, Galloway was out there making defensive backs look like they're running through molasses. Seriously, blink and you might miss him. With over 10,950 receiving yards and 77 receiving touchdowns under his belt, Joey wasn't just a deep threat receiver. He was the deep threat receiver. 1 second he's jogging, and then, bam, he hits the gas, leaving defenders with nothing but air to grab. His ability to outrun practically everyone on the field made him an absolute nightmare for opposing teams. But while Joey left defenders in the dust, Jerome Mathis took it a step further, turning the field into his personal racetrack. Jerome Mathis is a name that might not be as well known as some others in this video, but make no mistake, Mathis had speed to burn. As a wide receiver and kick returner for the Houston Texans, Mathis was a human blur on the field. During his rookie season in 2005, Mathis led the NFL in kick return yards and averaged a blistering 28.6 yards per return, which earned him a Pro Bowl selection. He also clocked a 4.26-second 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, cementing his place among the league's fastest. Whether he was blowing past defenders or taking a kickoff to the house, Mathis had a gear that few could match. His speed was pure electricity, lightning in a helmet and shoulder pads. While Mathis burned up the field with straight-line speed, Dante Hall added a joystick to the mix, turning defenders into helpless bystanders. Now, if you've ever seen Dante Hall return a kick, you'll know exactly why they gave him the nickname the Human Joystick. The guy was like a video game character, zigzagging past defenders, spinning, juking. As a wide receiver and return specialist for the Kansas City Chiefs, Hall turned special teams into must-watch TV. During his peak in the early 2000s, he had 12 return touchdowns and seemed to hit full speed instantly. Whether he was slicing through the coverage team or reversing the entire field for a touchdown, Dante Hall had a flair for the dramatic. If you think football is just brute strength, Dante Hall's agility and speed made it more of an art form. Well, that is cool and all. Devin Hester took what Dante Hall started and cranked it up to a whole new level of chaos for defenders. Devin Hester is arguably the greatest return specialist the NFL has ever seen. Hester was the kind of player who made you hold your breath every time he touched the ball. In his first season with the Chicago Bears, Hester recorded 6 return touchdowns, including a punt return in his NFL debut, and then a record-tying 108-yard touchdown from a missed field goal against the New York Giants. At the 2006 NFL Combine, Hester ran a 4.41-second 40-yard dash, showing off the speed that would make him a nightmare for special teams across the league. With a total of 20 return touchdowns in his career, including a legendary opening kickoff return in the Super Bowl, Devin had this uncanny ability to make defenders look like they were running in slow motion. His explosive acceleration was simply unreal, like he had an extra gear that no one else did. You'd see the defenders closing in, and then, boom, he'd be gone, leaving nothing but a trail of dust and disbelief. Watching Hester work his magic, it wasn't just about speed. It was about timing, precision, and making the impossible look routine. While Hester turned returns into pure magic, our next player, Jacoby Ford, brought track star speed that left defenders chasing shadows. Known for his blistering 4.28-second 40-yard dash at the 2010 NFL Combine, Ford brought track-level speed to the gridiron, and it showed. He had 4 return touchdowns in his career and always seemed to be one move away from breaking free. His first season was a highlight reel, with him torching defenders deep and even helping the Raiders pull off some miracle comebacks thanks to his blazing acceleration. Jacoby Ford's speed was on a different level. He was the kind of player who could turn a small gap into a big play in an instant, a player whose sheer speed made every play a potential game changer. Next is a player so so fast he would have owned the track world. But lucky for us, Fabian Washington unleashed his turbocharged speed in the NFL's defensive backfield instead. Fabian Washington was a cornerback whose speed was so remarkable it made quarterbacks think twice before testing his side of the field. During the 2005 NFL Combine, Washington clocked a blistering 4.29-second 40-yard dash, securing his spot among the fastest players in NFL history. Drafted 23rd overall by the Oakland Raiders, he brought his lightning-quick reflexes and agility to the secondary, making life difficult for wide receivers. Over his six-season career, Washington recorded 204 solo tackles and 6 interceptions, showcasing that his game was more than just speed. It was about anticipation and precision. His ability to close gaps and disrupt plays showed us his godlike level of athleticism and football IQ. Washington wasn't just a fast player. He was a defensive asset who used his speed to change the dynamics of the game. If you thought Fabian Washington was fast, wait until you meet Ron Brown, a player whose Olympian-level speed left defenders in awe. I'm talking about a player whose speed was truly Olympic, and I mean that literally. Ron Brown was an Olympic sprinter before he graced the NFL field. He won a gold medal in the 4x100-meter relay at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, and then took that world-class speed straight to the gridiron. As a wide receiver and return specialist for the Los Angeles Rams and later the Raiders, Brown brought unmatched acceleration. During his career, he returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns and was always a threat to break away the moment he touched the ball. His 4.28-second 40-yard dash was simply a glimpse into how he made defensive backs feel helpless. Watching Ron Brown streak down the field was like seeing a sprinter in shoulder pads. Pure, unfiltered speed. Up next is a player whose speed wasn't just impressive, it was game-changing. Stanford Routt brought a gear that left receivers and quarterbacks second-guessing every move. With the kind of speed Stanford had, quarterbacks always had to double-check their options. Routt's 4.27-second 40-yard dash at the 2005 NFL Combine was the fastest time recorded that year. Wasn't just impressive, it was the stuff of nightmares for any wide receiver hoping to create some separation. Drafted by the Oakland Raiders, because, of course, the Raiders love their speedsters, Routt quickly became a key part of their secondary. Picture this: a receiver thinks they've got a step on Routt, and just as they glance back for the ball, there he is, closing the gap like a sports car shifting into high gear. He wasn't just fast. He was the kind of fast that made you wonder if he was secretly training with Usain Bolt in the offseason. Stanford Routt's speed was his calling card, and he used it to shut down big plays before they even had a chance to happen. And even though Stanford was lightning fast, the next player made breaking away from defenders look so effortless. Randy Moss was no doubt one of the greatest deep threats the NFL has ever seen. Moss had the kind of speed that just seemed so effortless. Clocking a 4.25-second 40-yard dash, Randy combined blazing speed with the knack for making jaw-dropping catches look like backyard practice. When Moss was on the field, defenders knew they were in for a long day, a very long day of trying and mostly failing to keep up. Imagine a game where a quarterback launches the ball deep, and as the defenders scramble, there goes Moss, gliding down the sideline like he's in a different league. It wasn't just the speed, it was the swagger. His "you got mossed" moments became so legendary they turned into a cultural catchphrase. Randy Moss was a receiver, a phenomenon, and, at the risk of sounding corny, a highlight waiting to happen. And trust me, the speed dial is only getting cranked higher from here. Because imagine trying to catch someone like Michael Vick, an electrifying quarterback who ran like a wide receiver. He was quite possibly the most electrifying quarterback to ever play the game. Vick redefined what it meant to be a dual-threat quarterback, and his speed was a huge part of that equation. He clocked a 4.33-second 40-yard dash, but that hardly tells the whole story. Watching Vick play was like seeing a video game character come to life. Defenders looked like they were stuck in a drag, while Vick was moving at double speed. Not to mention, Vic is the only quarterback in NFL history to rush for more than 1,000 yards in a season, which just goes to show how unstoppable he was with the ball in his hands. The way he could scramble out of a collapsing pocket and turn what should have been a sack into a 50-yard gain was nothing short of magic. Defensive coordinators lost sleep over trying to contain him, and honestly, it was usually a lost cause. Vic practically glided, making elite athletes look like they were running through wet cement. If you think the speed stops here, well, you're in for a surprise. It's about to get even more unbelievable with Chris Johnson. Also known as CJ2K, Johnson was the man who made breaking the 2,000-yard rushing mark look easy. When Chris burst onto the scene, it wasn't just his skills that caught everyone's attention. It was his blinding speed. With a 4.24-second 40-yard dash at the 2008 NFL Combine, Johnson set the standard for what it meant to be fast in the modern NFL. In 2009, Johnson set the NFL record for 2,509 scrimmage yards in a single season and was named the AP NFL Offensive Player of the Year for his incredible performance. Defenders barely had time to get it together before he was 10 yards ahead of them, and once he got into the open field, you could pretty much call it a touchdown. Not only was he fast, he was deceptive. He'd lull you into thinking you had an angle, and then, just like that, he'd flip the switch and be gone. But if you thought CJ2K set the speedometer to max, think again, because Trindon Holliday is about to take it to an entirely new level. Holliday was a player so fast that even track stars had to take notice. Sure, he was one of the smallest players to ever hit the NFL field, but he made up for his size with sheer, jaw-dropping speed. While in college at LSU, Holliday ran the 100-meter dash at the 2007 USA Outdoor Track and Field Championships, where he recorded an incredible 10.07 seconds in the final, finishing ahead of world-class sprinter Walter Dix and second only to Tyson Gay. When it came to football, Holliday brought the same elite speed to the return game, becoming a threat to take it to the house every time he touched the ball. As a return specialist in the NFL, he racked up some unforgettable moments, including multiple return touchdowns in the playoffs. Holliday moved like a bullet streaking down the field. Blink, and he'd already be in the end zone celebrating. Don't blink now, because Cliff Branch is up next, and his speed is about to take this list into overdrive. Cliff Branch made sure defenders learned a very important lesson. You can't catch what you can't see. Branch was the original speedster, running circles around defenders long before blazing fast receivers became the norm. Playing for the Oakland Raiders from 1972 to 1985, Branch was known for his turbocharged legs that could leave defenders wondering if he'd just vanished into thin air. In a game in the 1970s, the Raiders were on offense, and suddenly, Cliff Branch took off like a rocket downfield. You can almost hear the groans of the defensive backs as they realize they're about to spend the next few seconds helplessly chasing shadows. With a background in track, Branch was terrifyingly fast. He helped the Raiders win 3 Super Bowls and piled up over 8,600 receiving yards without breaking a sweat. And let's be real, watching him was like watching an old-school action movie. It was fast, thrilling, and the bad guys never stood a chance. While Cliff was basically Barry Allen on the gridiron, Willie Gault had a knack for leaving defenders eating dust. This man was so fast, he'd probably had his own wind chill factor. Gault wasn't just an NFL star, he was also an Olympic-caliber sprinter. Imagine being a defender lining up against a guy who's literally competing against the fastest people on the planet. Yeah, good luck with that. Playing for the Chicago Bears and later the Los Angeles Raiders, Gault was the definition of a deep threat receiver. Quarterbacks loved him because they basically knew all they had to do was heave it as far as possible, and there was a good chance Willie would be at the other end waiting, like a kid catching a long bomb in a neighborhood game of street football. He helped the Bears win Super Bowl 20, and his speed wasn't just for show. He made big plays that changed games, and he did it with style. Gault was the kind of guy who'd turn on the jets and make defenders look like they were moving at a snail's pace. And the best part? He'd flash that smile after a big play, as if to say, "Did you really think you could keep up?" From Willie Gault's blazing speed to Ronaldo Nehemiah's world record-breaking pace, get ready to meet a player who brought Olympic-level explosiveness to the NFL. Ronaldo Nehemiah was a name that struck fear into the hearts of anyone who had the misfortune to cover him back in the day. Let me paint a picture for you. Ronaldo wasn't just an NFL player. He was a world-class hurdler. In fact, before he ever laced up cleats on an NFL field, he was busy setting world records in track and field, and not just any world records. Nehemiah was the first person to run the 110-meter hurdles in under 13 seconds. Imagine lining up against this guy, knowing full well that he could literally hurdle over you if he felt like it. Nehemiah joined the San Francisco 49ers, where his speed translated perfectly to the deep routes. Defenders often looked like they were chasing a shadow, while Ronaldo took off like a missile downfield. The dude had the kind of speed that makes you question if gravity even applies to him. And while his time in the NFL wasn't the longest, every minute he was out there, he was an absolute spectacle. And even though Nehemiah hurdled his way into NFL history, runners like Ike Taylor didn't need obstacles to show off his speed. He just left wide receivers in the dust. This was the cornerback who had more speed than most wide receivers dared to dream of. Taylor was the definition of a shutdown corner, and when you've got the kind of wheels he had, it's no wonder quarterbacks rarely threw in his direction. Let's put it this way. If you were a receiver trying to get past Ike, you were in for a rough day and probably a lot of frustration. Taylor clocked a blazing 4.26-second 40-yard dash, and he used every bit of that speed to blanket receivers all over the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Imagine you're a quarterback and you see your guy break free for a split second, and then, bam, there's Ike, closing in like a missile, ready to shatter your hopes of a completion. And you know what the best part was? Ike made it all look like a walk in the park. He played with that cool demeanor, as if saying, "You can try, but you're not getting past me." Oh, and let's not forget, Taylor was a key part of 2 Super Bowl winning teams. So yeah, he had the hardware to back up that speed. Ike no doubt locked down receivers with his blazing speed, but Deion Sanders, he turned speed into a spectacle, making every play a primetime performance. Better known as Primetime, Sanders was a showman, a force of nature, and the kind of player who could back up every ounce of swagger with lightning-fast speed. He was the guy who would pick off a pass, flash that million-dollar smile, and then sprint down the sideline with defenders trailing behind him like they were running through quicksand. And let's not forget, Deion wasn't just a threat on defense. As a return specialist, he could take a punt or kickoff to the house on any given play, leaving the other team, and of course the fans, wondering if he was part cheetah. During his career, which spanned from 1989 to 2005, Sanders amassed 7,838 all-purpose yards and scored 22 touchdowns, 9 from interception returns, 6 from punt returns, 3 from kickoffs, 3 receiving, and 1 fumble recovery. His 19 defensive and return touchdowns are still an NFL record. Not to mention, he was selected to 8 Pro Bowls between 1991 and 1999, and even won the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award in 1994. Talk about a unique mix of skill, speed, and pure entertainment value. Whether it was high-stepping into the end zone or playing for 2 professional leagues, yes, that's right, NFL and the MLB, primetime was always on. But while Sanders brought the flash and flair, Darrell Green made speed timeless, outrunning players across 4 decades on the field. Because while most NFL players are hanging up their cleats by their mid-30s, Green was out there in his 40s, sprinting past guys half his age and making it look like a casual Sunday jog. Green was an anomaly, a cornerback with insane speed and the kind of longevity that would make even the best athletes envious. For over 2 decades, he locked down wide receivers and chased down the fastest players in the league, often leaving them wondering if he was secretly aging in reverse. Imagine being a young receiver, thinking you could outrun a guy who was old enough to be your dad, and then realizing, much to your embarrassment, that Green is not only keeping up, but beating you to the spot. One of his most iconic plays came when he chased down Tony Dorsett, one of the fastest running backs in the league, from across the field, showing the world that Daryl's wheels were built differently. And did I mention he won the NFL's fastest man competition 4 times? If you're thinking that's just showing off, yeah, it kind of was, but he earned every bit of it. Green's speed was legendary, but Bo Jackson took it to another dimension where power and pace collided to leave defenders in disbelief. This is quite possibly the most iconic multi-sport athlete to ever walk the earth. Bo dominated both football and baseball like it was all one big backyard game. You might have heard the phrase, Bo knows. And let me tell you, Bo knew speed. He had that kind of speed that didn't just blow by defenders, it blew their minds. Imagine trying to tackle a freight train that can also run a 4.12-second 40-yard dash. That's Bo. He was a running back who made linebackers and defensive backs look like they were standing still. Not to mention, he did it with a kind of nonchalant power that made everything seem effortless. One of his most unforgettable moments came when he hit the sidelines and just kept going, all the way into the tunnel. If that's not the ultimate mic drop of speed, I don't know what is. And let's not forget, Bo once flattened Brian Bosworth, one of the toughest linebackers of his era, like it was just another Tuesday. But now, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. The fastest player in the history of the NFL. Imagine being nicknamed Bullet Bob. This man was the definition of speed. He was so fast that the NFL had to change the way the game was played. Yeah, that was Bob Hayes. Before he put on a Cowboys uniform, Hayes was an Olympic gold medalist, and he brought every bit of that world-class speed onto the football field. Picture defenders back in the 60s, jaws dropping, eyes widening as Hayes streaked down the sideline like a comet. No one had ever seen anything like it before. Defensive backs were left grasping at air, like cartoon characters chasing after a speeding roadrunner. Hayes redefined the wide receiver position. He was the reason teams started implementing zone coverage, because, quite frankly, one-on-one coverage against Bullet Bob was asking for humiliation. And the stories? Oh, they're legendary. Like that time in the 1964 Olympics when he ran a 10.06 in the 100 meters on a chewed-up dirt track while wearing borrowed spikes. The guy was practically built for speed. In the NFL, he racked up over 7,000 receiving yards and 71 touchdowns, blazing his way past defenders and making it all look far too easy. And let's not forget, he's still the only person to win both an Olympic gold medal and a Super Bowl ring. Bob Hayes was the OG speedster, the gold standard of fast. He was running routes and rewriting history at the same time. NFL players may be as fast as cheetahs, but it hasn't stopped them from deflating footballs for an unfair advantage or putting a bounty on other players. Just click on the next video to find the times NFL players were caught cheating.